Hello, welcome to my channel and to my subscribers, welcome back. Today we are making savory old-fashioned grits, and for the folks who live in the South or grew up in the South, you already know this dish is a staple, whether it's for breakfast or dinner, and we're going to get right into it. First, we're going to start by adding 1/4 cup of heavy whipping cream, 2 cups of chicken broth, as well as 2 cups of water. Now, I know someone in the comments is going to say, you're supposed to add the cream at the end. Well, I'm doing it this way for a reason. So, two things need to happen in order for cream or milk to curdle when you're cooking it. First, you have to combine it with an acid. And true, chicken broth is an acid. But the other part to that is you would have to cook the cream at a high heat before it would curdle or split. In this case, we're only going to cook it to a gentle boil. So we're only going to heat up the saucepan on medium heat once we're done stirring it. And the reason I'm doing it this way is to ensure the grits don't have that raw taste when you're eating them. Alright, so now that everything's been warmed to a gentle boil, we're going to proceed with adding our grits. And you want to be really careful with this step because if you pour the grits in too quickly, they'll clump up. So as you can see on the screen, I'm slowly pouring them in while stirring at the same time to keep them broken up. And you're going to keep doing that until all of the grits are in the pot. And then once all of the grits are in there, we'll continue to stir for a few seconds. Again, it's to prevent any clumping. And as a few grits got stuck to the bottom of the measuring cup, I had a bit of a hard time getting them out, and just had to get those in the pot. There we go. All right, I'm going to stir for a few more seconds. Now, once I'm finished stirring, I'm going to reduce the heat to medium-low, and then at this point, I'm going to allow the grits to simmer for about 5 minutes. Now, you might be thinking to yourself, that's a lot of liquid, and it looks that way at face value, but looks can be deceiving, and you're going to see that in a little bit. Grits absorb water easily. So I set the whisk aside, I'm letting it simmer now, and it's been about 5 minutes. So I'm going to stir the grits around and look at how they've already started clumping up with all of that liquid. So it's going to take a minute for me to break up all of the clumps with that whisk. But while I'm doing that, I want to pose a question to the viewers. So I'm originally from up north, so I grew up eating grits with sugar. I know down south that's sacrilege because down south it's savory grits or even cheese grits. I will eat both. It doesn't matter to me, but I'm curious to know, in your opinion, would you eat sugar grits or should the grits only be savory? Leave your feedback in the comment section below. I'm curious to hear what you have to say about it. And for the folks who prefer sugar in their grits, I'll take this time to also make a plug for myself and mention that I have a recipe on my page for grits with sugar in them. So feel free to visit my channel at your leisure and you can watch that video as well. Alright, so after doing all of that stirring, I've finally gotten rid of all the clumps. I'm going to set the whisk aside and let it simmer for an additional 5 minutes. Alright, so an additional 5 minutes have passed. It's been 10 minutes in total. Going to stir again, and this is, as I mentioned, and this is important, imperative to break up any clumping with the grits because they will clump up very easily. And at this step, we're going to add our other ingredients. We're going to add 1/4 cup of unsalted butter, and we're going to stir in the butter with the grits until it's well combined. And this will take a minute because it's going to take a bit of time for that butter to melt into the grits, but you do want to stir it in until that butter is completely or almost completely melted. And I will say this about butter. So what butter does when you add it to a dish, obviously it adds flavor because of its fat content, but it also helps to emulsify whatever dish that you're preparing. It helps to emulsify all of the ingredients together. So that being said, I always add it towards the end of cooking any dish, and the reason for that is because if you cook the butter for too long, similar to the cream, you'll risk the butter splitting from the dish, and then you'll end up with a runny, greasy mess. So you don't want that. So that's why you add it close to the end of when you're cooking the dish. So now we're going to add our seasonings, and you see all of the measurements on the screen. Going to pour those in there. All right. right, and we're going to do the same thing. We're going to stir the seasonings into the grits until they're well combined. And now that that's done, we're going to set the whisk aside, and we're going to allow the grits to simmer for an additional 5 minutes. And it's been about 15 minutes total, so we're going to give the grits one more good stir, and this is again to prevent any clumping. And circling back around to what I discussed earlier about all of the liquid that we use, now you can see how thick the grits are. So looks can be deceiving. That was a lot of liquid, but grits are like sponges. They will suck up all of that liquid as though it's candy. So we're going to set the whisk aside, and we're going to remove the grits from the heat. Going to turn off the stove and remove the pot from the burner. And at this point, grits are best when you serve them immediately. This is one of the few dishes where it's best if you eat it right off the stove. Of course, you would blow it with once you put it on the spoon before you put it in your mouth. But grits are not good at all once they start to cool off. It's best if you eat them while they're hot. And as far as servings, I got a comment about this in one of my previous videos. I always hesitate to provide suggestions because people take varying liberties with their portion sizes. But if you're using the bowl about the size of what you see in the video, I would say the serving size will be about 2. If you're using a smaller or a medium-sized bowl, you should be able to squeeze about 4 servings out of this. Now you see how well those grits are adhering to the spoon? If your grits don't look like that, I don't want them, because I've seen some really soupy-doopy grits recipes on the internet. If that's your speed, more power to you, but mine's gotta be thick. And I hope you enjoyed this video. If you would like to see more of this content, please like, share, and subscribe. Thanks for watching.